Okay, we're finishing today. And Mitzvah Shem. You have the copies of the Mizmor Chanukas. The lady who does my editing sent me an angry message. What happened to last Wednesday's classes? Didn't respond yet. We did Beis Yet Fesh with the Feres. We did the Rebbe Marash. Okay, now, shall we? My daughter had a little girl this morning. What do you think of that? Huh? Yep. Big deal. Big deal. I have a sister who's a couple of years older than I am. I have 6 grandchildren. How many does my sister have? At least 16. So she says grandchildren are like popcorn. You know how popcorn works? Pop, 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 pop. It's our grandchildren. That's her word. And then they come fast and furious. Einiklach. The guy in my block who says, if I knew how much fun grandchildren are, I would have had them before I had my kids. Okay, here I go. I'm putting up my cameras. Ready to roll, people? Yeah? Angles, 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 angles. Sit. Okay. Mizmor Chanukas. Yeah, let's do quickly attendance. Thank you. Miriam, Nati, Maya, Ariel Serach, right? Stay. Not listening. Focused. That are good. Okay. Does everybody have a page of Mizmor Chanukas with the English? Yeah? How does it look? Looks like this with numbers, remember? You have one of these? Okay. Good morning. Okay. This is a song. Wait, I taught it to you. Mushki Sawisa. Yeah. You know, my paper. You want a copy of the Siddur?
Do you want a copy?
Do you have a copy?
No.
Here. Come. With a song, I this morning when I was preparing, I listened to pieces of the class from 2 weeks ago. So I should remember what I taught, you know what I'm saying? And the Nakuda is that we're understanding Mizmor Chanukas Habayis to be a celebration of a relationship with Hashem of Kabbalah Sel. That's how we're explaining it. the celebration, the appreciation for the idea that we have a connection to Hashem based on submission. Now, what's so exciting about having a relationship with Hashem based on submission? So the answer in a word is like it says in the Tillim. We say it every day in davening. Sameach nefesh avdecha. You're never closer to God than when you submit to Him. You're never closer to Hashem when you're mabitl. And then there's a joy in that. The joy is not that my life is by itself meaningful. There's the joy of being a servant of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. This is what Mizmeh Shir Chanukas Abayis David is about. Mizmeh Shir Chanukas Abayis David is about. How did we break the kapitel down? We break the kapitel down that there's two attitudes towards this Mizmeh Shir Chanukas Abayis. The first is number 5. V'ani amarti b'shalvi v'lemet le'elam. A person serves Hashem on a level of submission, and he says it's always going to stay like this. V'ani amarti, I was thinking b'shalvi when my life was peaceful, v'lemet le'elam, it's never going to change. And of course, that's not the way it works, right? Histarta panecha for a rega. Hashem turns away His face for a moment, and the whole world falls to pieces. So there's the other option. What's the other option? Leman yizamercha choved v'layidem. That's line, the 10th line, the second line from the bottom. That the person's covered, the person's separateness from Hashem sings to try and get close to Hashem. V'layidem, and it never goes quiet. Hashem Elokai, the Eibishter is my God. Le'elam Adeka, I will always submit. So this is how we taught it. There's a submission that's not a constant work. And there's a submission that you have to renew every minute. A submission which is always without change. Either it's the madrega of a perfect tzaddik, or it's a klipa. In Kedusha, you run to Hashem now, you run to Hashem in a minute, you run to Hashem in 10 minutes, you run to Hashem in an hour, you run to Hashem in 10 hours, you run to Hashem in a day, you run to Hashem in 10 days, you run to Hashem in a year, you run to Hashem in 10 years, and so on and so forth. You're always running. There's always a newness. There's always a need to connect to HaKadosh Baruch Hu again, because by ourselves we're separate. So on line 5, we have Ani Amarti B'Shal V'Lemet La'ilam. The person thinks that his bittul to Hashem is constant. And on line 10, we have how it is actually. Now, since we set that stage, since we created this mishbetzes, we created this framework, we created this insight into how to read this kapitel, we started reading on, okay? And what I explained to you was, if you hit 2 weeks ago, was that there's 2 types of people who are attempting to submit to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. 2 types of people whose Avodas Hashem revolves around bittul and submission to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The first is a person who's a tzaddik, a great person. He's a pious person, he's a righteous person, and he wants a relationship with Hashem of submission. And the second is a regular person, a person like you and I, not special, not holy, and he wants to submit to HaKadosh Baruch Hu because that's the entire basis for his relationship to Hashem. So I explained to you line 7. Eilecha Hashem ekra ve'el adna yeschanon. Right? I explained to you that it says in the commentaries on this Pedic that some people hold that you have twice the word Hashem in that pasuk. The second one should not be Havaya, it should be Adna. It's not the name of Hashem. Yud Kei Vav Kei, which is the greatest name of Hashem, but it's Adna, the Eibush is the master. And the meaning of the pasuk, Elach Hashem Ekrav, Ela Hashem Eschana, means the 2 are calling to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The first is calling to HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the tzaddik, the person who has a relation with the Eibush that's very sophisticated, but he wants to be what we call in our culture Ben Shenasa Eved. He wants the advantage of bittul. He wants the advantage of Kabbalah Seil. So Elach Havaya Ekra. He's already connected to Hashem. He's calling to Hashem because he wants also the advantage of serving Hashem and love Labitl and Hidon Kabbalah Seil. And the second half of the pasuk, El Adna Yeschanon, means this is talking about a regular person who's by himself far from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He's not intimate with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And he also wants to have a relationship with the Eibishter based on bittul, based on submission, but he's coming from a place of distance. Do you remember this? Do you remember this, right? The Lach Havaya Ekra is the person who's on a higher level. Pardon me. What I kept Kabbalah sale. Well, Hashem es Chanan. And again, in some opinions, it's not written Havaya, it's written Adnai is the lower person also seeking to have a relationship with the Eibush of being a servant, Avda, servant of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And then we read the next pasuk that the person who's on the lower level continues his conversation with Hashem in asking for Hashem to have this relationship of submission. He says, "Ma'beh tabedami." What reward is there in my blood? If I fall into the abyss, in other words, he says to the Eibush that I may not be a big chassid, I might not be such an erlich yid, but you don't gain by destroying me. Why? Will the earth submit to you? Will the earth speak your emes? So this person who has flaws, who has chesreines in his relationship to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, says to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, almost, you're stuck with me. You created me. I exist. So whatever level I'm on, whatever kind of avoida I do, it's better for you to get the avoida that I do than to get from me nothing. Right? That's like mebetza bedami. What are you going to gain if I am pushed aside? So this is sort of this is the word. A yid wants a connection to Hashem, and he wants a connection to Hashem based on bittul, based on submission, because of the advantages of submission and bittul. And he says to the Eibishter, in effect, that it's in the Eibishter's best interest also that the yid should have this relationship. Now, 2 weeks ago, when we learned this last, I'm sure I told you the stories that I always tell about what it means to be connected to a tzaddik. When you're connected to a tzaddik, the koiches of the tzaddik are bestowed upon you. Right? The story with a Hasidic Rebbe. This story, I don't know if I told you, the story with a Hasidic Rebbe, not a Chabad Hasidic Rebbe, who was visited by one of his Hasidim. And the Chassid said to him as follows: I have a young girl, a teenager, like 16 years old, who's very, very pretty, very, very beautiful. And the local poets, local landowner's son spotted her, and he's drawn to her, and he's making overtures. He wants to develop a relationship with her. And of course, El Chayid doesn't want his daughter hanging around with the poet's son, no matter how much money he has. But because he's the son of the landowner, we can't just say no, he'll punish us. So what should we do? Did I tell you the story or not? So this Hasidic Rebbe calls in two people. It says, I am making you edus, witnesses. Go to my Rebbetzin, go to my wife, and ask my wife a question. My Rebbetzin a question. If I would ask for a divorce, would you take it from me? If I would say to you, Rebbetzin, I want to divorce you, would you agree to take the divorce? That's a funny thing to send two people to your wife with a request. Anyway, the two witnesses come into the Rebbetzin and they say, we have a message from the Rebbe. The message of the Rebbe is, the Rebbe wants to know that if he would ask for a divorce, would you take it from him? She was taken aback. She wasn't expecting that. But she said, my husband is a tzaddik, and if this is what he thinks needs to be done, then I would go along with it. Okay, so the shluchim come back from the tzaddik, and they say that the Rebbe and say that if the Rebbe would want, so she would take a divorce. Huh? Then he says, okay, so my wife is going to take a get conditionally. Then he calls in three people to make your bezdin. I want to negotiate terms to marry the girl of this chassid who's suffering from whatever it is. So they make a kinyan. The father is there, and the chassid, this Rebbe says, okay, I'm going to marry your daughter. He hasn't divorced his wife yet. He could divorce her, so he already has, the way is open that he's going to marry this girl. So they take a kinyan, they bake a plate, they say Mazel Tov. After they say Mazel Tov, the tzaddik starts to scream, how dare that goy mess with my kala? Anyway, he didn't have such a good end. I don't know how the story ends, but she didn't suffer from the kala anymore, from this goy anymore. After he was out of the way, so he broke the tnoim, and he was mafayas his wife, and that's the end of the story. This is a story from Polish Tzaddikim. Polish Tzaddikim are very interesting people. They did things in many different ways. But of course, the question, this is a famous story. The question is, why did he have to ask his wife to tentatively take a divorce? And then he had to tentatively become engaged to this girl. And then only then was he able to complain, how come this Paritz's son is after my Kala? Why couldn't he just say, Yiddish Tochter? And of course, part of the answer is connection. Tzaddikim do things in different ways for different reasons. And the tzaddik felt that he could best help this girl by connecting her to him more closely. So he made her theoretically into his kala, that he was able to help her, and then they took the theory away. This is a mashal. The nimshal is we want a relationship with Hashem, and there's different possible relationships. The greatest relationship with the Eibishter is that we're his servant, that we submit to him. And we're asking him, Alecha Hashem Ekra, Val Hashem Eschanon is a prayer that the Eibishter should help us have a relationship with him, which is based on Haidah, it's based on submission, it's not based on understanding, it's not based on feeling, it's not based on experience, it's based on submission. Okay, then we say that it's in the Eibishter's best interest, whether I'm a good person, I'm a bad person, I'm a tzaddik or a beinoni, I'm a rasha, it's in the Eibishter's best interest to help me connect to him because of my bet abedami. Now we read the next pasuk, which is on line 8 in your text, and it's pasuk Yud Aleph in the Perek. You with me? Shema Hashem v'chaneni. Listen to me, God. Show me chanina. Show me benevolence. Hashem God Almighty hayei ezer li, help me. Now the way I'm interpreting this pasuk is that Shema Havaya v'chaneni is again the tzaddik talking. Hashem hayei ezer li is the simple yid talking. Both the tzaddik and the simple yid have the same request. The request is they want a relationship with Hashem, and faket, they appreciate that the preferred, the better relationship that they can have with HaKadosh Baruch Hu is one of submission. And that's what they're asking for. They're asking for Shir Chanukah Sabayas, to have a relationship based on a Makev HaRachik and a distance from the Eibishter. But the tzaddik says, Shema Havaya v'chaneni, listen to me, God, and give me chanino, give me chen, give me grace, give me charm, give me appeal, give me magnetism. I'm going to explain it soon. The simple person that Hashem God Almighty hayei easily help me. There's a very big difference between giving a person chen and giving a person ezer. There's a very big difference in giving a person grace, chanina, and giving a person ezer, help. Are you guys with me? Are you guys with me? So now, let's talk about one at a time. What does the word chen mean? What does chen mean? Anybody speak Hebrew? What does chen mean? Graciousness. When it says in Eishes Chayil, Sheker HaChein ve'evel ha'yoifi, Isha Yiras Hashem Mitzvah Alo, what does the word chen mean over there? You remember? Sheker HaChein ve'evel ha'yoifi, the second to the last pasuk of Eishes Chayil. Over there, they translate chen in English as vanity. So how do you break that down? How is chen graciousness and charisma and vanity at the same time? There's a very good answer to that question. There's a Maimon in Ches from the Rebbe Rashab, where he explains this from Tafresh Ches 103 years ago. The vart is as follows: if a person has charisma, if a person has charm, if a person has a likability factor, some people are that. You meet a person and just like the person. Sometimes you meet a person and take him or leave him. So if a person has a likability factor, is that a good thing or it's a bad thing? It depends. If the person is a good person, the likability factor makes them a bad person. A better person. But if the person is a bad person, the likability factor makes them a worse person because they get away with it. That's why Moshe Rabbeinu says to Hashem, and Shlomo Melech writes in Mishlei, Sheker HaChein. If you have the kind of, face, personality that people are drawn to, if you're a real person, which means you understand the meaning of the word work, and you also understand that the true concept of work is not working in a factory or in a plumbing supply store or in a dining, in a restaurant. Real work is work on self, right? So that to become a better human being, a more hardworking human being, a more refined human being, a good human being, a kind human being, a generous human being, a compromising human being, a forgiving human being, an accepting human being, a happy human being, a peaceful human being. If a person works on him or herself and develops fine character, good traits, and they have chen, the chen makes them better. Because the chen means that other people are drawn to their goodness, to their life of hard work because of their chen. What if a person who's ugly? They're selfish, they're dishonest, they're manipulative, they're exploitive, they take advantage of others, and they have chen. How would you say this in English? They get away with it. If a person has a likability factor, they can get away with things that a person without that likability factor could never get away with. So a person whose life is empty, who's not working on himself, just business, the business of making making money, stealing money, whatever the case is, that person's chen is going to work against him. Sheker chen. You understood so far? So when it says here, Shema Hashem v'chaneni, and I'm translating Shema Hashem v'chaneni goes on the tzaddik. A tzaddik is smart. A tzaddik is passionate. A tzaddik is sensitive. A tzaddik knows and feels Hashem on many levels. But he wants an intimacy with Hashem. He wants to feel Hashem himself. He wants to be close to Hashem. The only way to get close to Hashem is through submission, is through bittul. So he says, Shema Havaya, listen to me. Give me chanina. Give me the gift of grace. Give me the gift that you should like me. That's what it means. Shema Hashem, listen to me. Give me chanina. Make me likable. Make me that you should like me. So what's the pshat Shema Hashem v'chaneni? You have to think about this for a moment. Tracht. A Yid wants a relationship with Hashem based on Kabbalah Seil. A Yid knows, I'm going to get close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The best way to get close to Hashem is not by understanding Him and feeling Him and experiencing Him. The best way to get close to Hashem is doing what He says, to submit to Him. Yeah, bittul, to submit to the Eibishter. So he's asking Hashem to help him submit. How was he asking Hashem to help him submit? He says to Hashem, give me chen. Give me the quality of likability which will affect my ability to have Kabbalah Seil. So what's the pshat? In other words, what's the meaning of this phrase? And why is this phrase so controversial, I suppose, if it's very hard to understand? If a person is using his brain and he says, if I'll have chen, you'll like me better. If a person is using his heart, he says, I'll have chen, you'll like me better. If a person is using even his neshama, and he has chen, you'll like him better. But if a person is serving Hashem with a submission, if a person is giving himself to Eibishter with total bittul, where's the chen here? What's beautiful about Kabbalah Seil? What's beautiful about bittul? You follow? Shema Hashem v'chaneni. A Yid, and we're assuming, this is my own invention, I'm interpreting Pshat in the Pasuk, that there's two types of Yidden who have a relationship with Hashem based on Kabbalah Seil. The first is a greater Jew, a Chosid, a Tzaddik, and he says, Shema Havaya v'chaneni, I want to have a relationship with you based on bittul. I'm asking you to help me by giving me chanina, or giving me grace. How does that come together? How does Kabbalah Seil and chanina come together? Now, I think my question is a very good one, but I also think that that's what, there's a story with today is the yahrzeit of my great-grandfather, of my grandfather, and my father-in-law, 3 generations. My wife's father's name was Moshe Nemenov. Today is his yahrzeit. He passed away, and his father's yahrzeit name was Nissen Nemenov. And it's also the yahrzeit of my great-grandfather, was also a great chassid, whose name was Abisal Levi Levin, Abisal Nevle. These were big chassidim, great chassidim, and they share a yahrzeit. So in my family, today is a day. My father is commemorating yahrzeit for his grandfather, and my wife is commemorating yahrzeit because she lost her father. So today is a special day. So the Nissen Nemenov has a story. That means my wife's father's father, and they passed away on the same day, have a story. The story is that the Frierdiker Rebbe was in jail and he's released from prison. And he was told that he could stay home for 3 hours. Then he has to go to the train station and go off from where he lived in Leningrad to a city called Kostroma, which was in Asia. It was meant to be an exile. He lasted in Asia 9 days. 9 days. After 9 days, they told him, you're free to go home. And he went home. And then a few months later, he left Russia altogether. When the Frierdiker Rebbe went out of jail, he went home. He went to the train station. He gave instructions that nobody should come to the train. Nobody should come to the train. You know why he said no one should come to the train? You know why? Miriam?
Yeah.
Why?
So
The Frierdiker Rebbe was going from being in jail to being in exile. And in between, he went home for 2 hours, 3 hours. He told the Chassidim not to come to the train. Why did he not come to the train? Because it's sakon, it's dangerous for them. The Frierdiker Rebbe comes to the train station, and every chassid in the world was there. He gave specific instructions, don't come. Everybody came. They wanted to see the Rebbe. The Rebbe was in jail 18 and a half days. And they beat him up. But they broke him. They broke his goof. They broke his goof. They broke his goof. So the Rebbe comes to the train station, and he sees all the people he told not to come. Every single one is there. So he asks, is Nissen there? That means my father-in-law's father. Is Nissen here? Everybody says Nissen here. And he said, no, Nissen's not here. So the Rebbe says, everybody came, and the only one who didn't come is Nissen. So they told the Rebbe said we shouldn't come, and he's the one who's listening. So the Rebbe said, a Zaydene soldat, a silken soldier, or a different years, Azise soldat, a sweet soldier. How could soldiery be sweet? How could soldiery be silken? Soldiery is, what's a soldier? I hate to say it, soldiers kill or be killed, but the number one definition of a soldier is he has discipline. He does what you tell him. When a soldier gets an order, he doesn't ask why, he does it. But there's sometimes Azise soldat. Azaydene soldat, that in being a servant is a sweetness. How could there be sweetness in Kabbalah Sale? Kabbalah Sale is boring. Kabbalah Sale is cold. Kabbalah Sale is technical. What the answer is, if a person truly submits to the Eibishter, he experiences the Eibishter to whom he submitted. And that's sweet. That's silken. And that's how we're going to translate these words. Shma Havaya v'chaneni. I'm asking for chanina, for chen, in the area of Kabbalah Sale. What does Kabbalah Sale do with chen? Kabbalah Sale is dry. Kabbalah Sale is simple. Kabbalah Sale is submission. And the answer is that even in Kabbalah Sale, there's a possibility for chanina. In Kabbalah Sale, there's a possibility for having a sweetness. And this person who's a big chassid, who's a big tzaddik, is saying to the Eibush, Shma Havaya v'chaneni, give me the chen, so that my Kabbalah Sale will be as it's supposed to be. And then he finishes, Hashem heyei oizeli, help me. Now Hashem helping us is very different than Hashem giving us chen. You understand? The first person, Hashem isn't giving anything. He's just giving him a quality or property of likability. The second one is fighting a war. He's struggling with Yetzer Hara. And he says to the Eibush, Hashem heyei oizeli, help me, make it easier for me. In other words, I'm struggling, I'm fighting with my Yetzer Hara. I want to have Kabbalah Sale, and I'm not always succeeding, and not always so good at it. Ezer, help me achieve the idea of Kabbalah Sale, the idea of bittul. You follow? Now, I want to play a game with words. You can spell Ezer in 2 ways. If you look on line 9, it says Ezer, Ayin Zayin Reish. If you look on the 10th line, the second word is Vate Azreini. The share is the word Vate Azreini is also Ezer, Aleph Zayin Reish. Again, on line 9, it says Hashem Hayei Oizeli. On line 10, it says Vata Azreini Simcha. The shaders of the word Vata Azreini is also Ezer, but there's a very big difference in the 2 words. What's the difference? Aleph and Ayin. You see? What's the difference between Ezer Metan Ayin and Ezer Metan Aleph? Ezer with an Ayin means to help. Eizim with an aleph means to put on a girdle. You davened this morning. You davened. You said Birchas Shachar. You said him? You said Shlo Yasani Goy? You said Shlo Yasani Ovid? You said Shlo Yasani Ish? You didn't say that one. You said Anoisin Lasech V'Yivina Lahavchem B'Yem Evin Loila. Yeah. You said Sh'asli Kotzarki. What's the next bracha after Sh'asli Kotzarki? Baruch Atah Hashem Melech Haolam. Oizer Yisrael B'Gavur. How do you spell Oizer in that pasuk? An aleph. Oizer Yisrael B'Gavur means gattel me, girdle me, tie a rope around me to hold me B'Gavur. So Oizer with an ayin means to help. Oizer with an al means to tie, to bind. So on line 9 it says Hashem Heyei Oizeli, help me achieve the place of Bittul and Kabbalah. When it says in the next line, V'atazereni Simcha, it's a very different thing. It's not Hashem helping us. It's Hashem, so to speak, securing us, tying us down. Okay? I was just a play on words. I couldn't resist saying it, so I'm saying it. You follow? Yeah? Let's move on. I need to ask you a favor. I don't want to stop teaching. Can I ask you a favor? I need a half a cup of hot water and 2 or 3 teaspoons of coffee, and that's it, because I need to keep my eyelids from collapsing. Please. I'm going to tell a story while you're gone, so you don't miss any of the. I just need some water. I need a jolt, as they say. They call it Red Bull in some cultures. Our Rebbe married the Rebbe in 1928. Yeah. Which is 93 years ago. So the Rebbe married the Rebbetzin 92 years ago, Tofresh Peites, 1928. When the Rebbe married the Rebbetzin, the Rebbe's parents were not present at the wedding. They were in Russia. And the Frierdiker Rebbe was the whole wedding with the Frierdiker Rebbe, versteht ihr? And of course, the Rebbe was destined to be the Frierdiker Rebbe's Mamalabok. The Rebbe was going to sit on the chair of the Frierdiker Rebbe. So the wedding was a very special wedding in many ways. Physically, it was very special. Spiritually, very special. A lot of very important people came to the wedding. And you could almost say that wedding was the Frierdiker Rebbe showcasing himself. That wedding, the Frierdiker Rebbe showing himself, who he is, to the Jews of Poland. But it was also a special moment between the Rebbe and the Frierdiker Rebbe. So before the chuppah, the Rebbe took the Frierdiker Rebbe to a private room. It was a custom. Before the chuppah, the custom in a private room. Then Shulchan Aruch it's brought, you're supposed to put over here ash. By the chasna, you're supposed to put ash. All Jews do it. Sfardim, Ashkenazim, Chassidim, Misnagdim, Modern Orthodox. All Yidden put over here a little bit ash for the Churban Beis HaMikdash, except for one group. Take a wild guess. The Chabad. It's a Gemara Mufresh. I have no idea why. That's the Mitzias. But in many communities, I remember I had uncles. They got married. They put a little ash. In addition, you put on the Rebbe's kapote, whatever it is. So when the Rebbe went into a private room with the Frierdiker Rebbe took a gartel and he tied it around the Rebbe. And as he tied the gartel around the Rebbe, the Frierdiker Rebbe said to the Rebbe, I really should make a bracha, Oizer Yisrael b'gevura with an aleph. Oizer, to girdle Israel with gevura, with strength. But I made the bracha in the morning, and I didn't have kavanah to be able to make the bracha a second time, so I'm not making the bracha. But then the Rebbe said, with this gartel, with this string, spoken Yiddish, bin dich zu mir und mich zu dir, with this string, I'm tying you to me and me to you in this world and the next world. That's like Oizer mit an aleph. Oizer mit an ayin is not the same thing. Oizer mit an ayin means help me. Oizer mit an aleph means girdle me, tie me down. You follow? Now we're going to get to V'ata'azreini Simcha on the next line, but I want to tell you noch a ma'aser. In the Rebbe's journal, and I believe these stories are incredibly connected. In the Rebbe's journal, our Rebbe kept the journal. Our journal, the Frierdiker Rebbe tells all kinds of, the Rebbe repeats all kinds of stories that the Frierdiker Rebbe told him. The Rebbe's journal has many things in it, but one of them is a record of different conversations he had with the Frierdiker Rebbe. Okay? And one of the stories the Frierdiker Rebbe told him was the following story. That the Alter Rebbe was, thank you very much.
didn't put sugar in it. You didn't say sugar.
No sugar. No. Good, thank you. I need it to be I call it the noxious of noxious. It works. Sometimes works. It gives me a jolt. I didn't sleep very much last night. My eyes are like lead. And when I start saying words and I'm not sure what's coming out of my mouth, it's time to have one of these. So the Friedrich Rebbe told the Rebbe our story. What's the story? When the middle Rebbe was Masamba before Bar Mitzvah, the second Rebbe before Bar Mitzvah, the Alter Rebbe called him and he gave him a gatl. The Alter Rebbe had 3 sons, but he didn't give each of his sons a gatl. He gave only one, only the middle Rebbe. Then, when the Tzemach Tzedek, who was one of the Alter Rebbe's grandsons, reached a certain age, again, I'm assuming it was before Bar Mitzvah, Alter Rebbe called the Tzemach Tzedek, his grandson, gave him a gatl. But the Alter Rebbe had many grandchildren. He didn't give the others a gatl, just the Tzemach Tzedek. The Tzemach Tzedek had 7 boys, 7 sons. The youngest of his 7 sons was the Rebbe Marash. When the Rebbe Marash reached a certain age, 12 years old, the Tzemach Tzedek called the Rebbe Marash to his room, along with his Melamed, the teacher that he lived with in Cheder, and he gave the Rebbe Marash a gatl. When the Tzemach Tzedek gave the gatl to the Rebbe Marash, the Melamed says, I don't understand. I taught all of your sons. How come you didn't give the others a gatl? So the Tzemach Tzedek said these words: Ba uns in the talking kashes, of uns in the talking kashes, die was verstehen, verstehen, die was verstehen nicht, verstehen nicht. Which means by us there are no questions, on us there are no questions. Those who understand, understand. Those who don't understand, don't understand. Tzemach Tzedek said to the Melamed, I'm giving him a gatl, nothing to talk about, no questions. Then the Marash becomes a Rebbe, and he has 4 boys, actually. One of them is the Rebbe Rashab, and he calls the Rebbe Rashab to give him a gatl. Who was the witness? The same Melamed, the same teacher that 20 years earlier, or 30 years earlier, the Tzemach Tzedek had given him a gatl in the presence of this Melamed, and the Marash calls the Rebbe Rashab, his 2nd son or his 3rd son, with the Melamed, and he gives him a gatl. Someone says, wait a minute, you have another son, you didn't give him a gatl. And the Rebbe Marash repeats exactly the same words that the Tzemach Tzedek had said when the Tzemach Tzedek gave him a gatl in the presence of the same Melamed. By uns in the talking kashes, afus in the talking kashes. By us there are no questions, on us there are no questions. Those who understand, understand. Those who don't understand, don't understand. End of story. When the Friedrich Rebbe was 11 years old, the Rebbe Rashab said to his mother, to the Rebbe Tenifke, quote, ich tracht geben hem a gatl. I'm thinking to give him, the Friedrich Rebbe, a gatl. So the Rebbe Rivka says to her husband, her son, Otazevi de Tata Hadir, you gave him the same kind of gatl your father gave you, and the Rebbe Rashab says, Azevi de Tata me, the Rebbe Rashab gave me. So she bought silk, the Rebbe Rivka, and she made the gatl herself. She wove it. She bought thread and she made the gatl herself. She spun it, she made the gatl. When the gatl was finished, she called the Friedrich Rebbe, and she said to Friedrich Rebbe, here, I'm giving you a gatl. So the Friedrich Rebbe says, what does this mean? She says, to know what it means, you're going to have to ask your father. So the Friedrich Rebbe took the gatl in his hand and he ran to his father's house, father's office.
How old was he?
Before Bar Mitzvah, 11. And he walks to his father. And the Friedrich Rebbe says to the Rebbe, the Friedrich Rebbe told the story to the Rebbe. All these details I read in the Rebbe's journal. That his father, as a rule, used to call him by his full name. He called him Yosef Yitzchak. He called him by his full name. But when Bedicha Daite, when the Rebbe Rashab was in a good mood, he would sometimes use a nickname. And he had a whole bunch of different nicknames for the Friedrich Rebbe. One of them was Rabbi Yasha, another one was Rabbi Yezel, Rabbi Yosef. So this day, the Rebbe Rayatz, the Friedrich Rebbe, a boy of about 11, runs to his father's room and knocks on the door. The Rebbe opens the door, the Rebbe Rashab. He sees the son's new Rabbi Yezel. He tells him a very affectionate word of allusion of affection. Rabbi Yezel, and the Friedrich Rebbe picks up the gatl. Like my grandmother gave this to me and she said, you have to tell me what it means. So the Rebbe Rashab became very, very earnest, very serious. He took the Friedrich Rebbe into his room, he closed the door and he locked it. What happened after that, the Friedrich Rebbe didn't tell the Rebbe, or at least the Rebbe didn't write it down. So the presumption is that when the Rebbe got married, the Rebbe was not a son, he was a son-in-law. So right before the chuppah, the Rebbe gave him a gatl. He tied him. He says, this gatl is, I should really make a bracha, oizer Yisrael b'gvura. Over here you have oizer b'simcha, the oizer Yisrael b'gvura. But I already made the bracha in the morning. But with this gatl, I'm tying you to me and me to you. So the point that I want you to appreciate, I just digressed because I wanted to digress. I wanted to give you a spin. The third pasuk from the end, second to the last word is oizer. The second pasuk from the end, the second to the last word is oizer v'ta'azreini. But one is oizer metanayin, the other is oizer metanaf. They're very different. Oizer metanayin means help me. Help me means I want to submit to you and I can't submit by myself. Shema havai v'chaneni means I'm going to submit to you. I'm going to have bittul. I'm asking you to give my bittul chanina, that the bittul should be sweet, that the bittul should be silken, to use the expressions of the previous step. But the simple Jew's bittul, he says, I need you to help me. You follow? Now, we continue. Hafachta mispedi lemochali. You reversed, you turned over my hesped. Hesped means my sadness, my eulogy, into a mochel. What is the meaning of the word mochel? You have the English translation. Mochel means dancing, into dancing. But in Hebrew, the word mochel could also mean what? I forgive you. Hafachta, you turned mispedi, what should have been a sad day for me, into a mocheli, that you forgave me. So the word mochel has at least two translations. At least two translations. Mochel means to forgive, and mochel means to dance. But mochel means a unique kind of dance. Right? How do you know that? Right? Where do you have in the Chumash a mochel? That's right. That Miriam took a tupim and they danced b'mecholos. They danced in the English translation. The word mechol is they danced the horror. The Jewish dance. I mean, Jews are not exactly the world's greatest dancers, right? Jews have other milas, but Jews also dance, and you dance in a circle, the horror, mechol. You have another case, we have a mechol. When they made the egel, it says b'mecholos. They were dancing also in a circle. Now, what does it mean to dance in a circle? What does it mean to dance in a circle?
Unity.
First of all, it means we're dancing together, which is a nice thing. Hafachta mispedi, you turned over what should have been my day of sadness into a mochali, into a forgiveness, into dancing. How does the Eibishter be mahapech mispedi lemochel? By giving this yid who's asking for help in the Inyan of Kabbalah, Hashem gives him help, right? And he's dancing in a circle. What's the significance of dancing in a circle? Number one, he's dancing with other people. But there's another thing about a circle. In Hasidus, the word Bochel is explained, a whole arichas, which I'm not going to go into. But dancing in a circle means, if you're dancing in a circle, who's the beginning? If you're walking in a straight line, you have someone at the beginning, someone in the middle. If you're dancing in a circle, everyone is in the same place. There's no beginning, there's no mouth. So when you have a circle, which has no middle and no beginning and no end, there's two concepts. There's two things about a machayil. Number one, it's a mashal for infinity, for Ein Sof. Why? Because there's no beginning, no middle, and no end. It's theoretically an infinity. You follow? Yeah. But there's a number two. What's the number two? That dancing in a circle represents a lack of sophistication. It represents immaturity, smallness. In other words, a circle on the one hand represents infinity, and a circle on the other hand represents I'm not so smart that my avodas Hashem should be developed. Everything is an akud. It's a single point. And I think both of those translations are included in these words. That because the Eibishter gives chanina, because the Eibishter gives ezer, to he who calls to Hashem and says, help me, in terms of my avodah. So when Hashem helps, a fachta is transforming mispedi, what would have been a sad day, lemochel, to a forgiveness, lemochel, to dancing in a circle, and that the dancing of the circle represents an idea of believable without any limits. Now, the way I want to read the word mochel, because it serves my purposes, what's believable, what's infinite? Bittul. You want an infinite relationship with God? Submit. We're good? Pitachta saki. Like pitachta saki.
Open.
Pitachta saki. Pitachta. You have English, Chavre. You have English. You got English. Pitachta saki. You opened, you loosened the cord of my sackcloth. Pitachta means you opened. You want to have a copy here. Pitachta saki. You opened up my sack. Now, girls, what is the meaning? So first of all, Hebrew. Who knows modern Hebrew? Pitachta means to open. What else does pitachta mean?
Develop.
You develop. Pituach. When somebody has a skill and you develop it, it's called pituach. Pitachta means to open. And pitach means to develop. Now, what's a sack? A sack. Let's give an example which is realistic, okay? Do you know what burlap is? You know what denim is? It's not Hasidish. You know what jeans are made out of?
Oh, yeah.
They're made out of burlap, they're made out of sack, a tent. Yeah, you make tents. What are tents made out of? Made of a cloth. It's called burlap. It's called denim. It's a very strong, it's a very tough material. It's not fine, it's not pretty, but it's strong, it's tough, yeah. If you take a piece of burlap or a piece of denim, which if you would make, what's the word they use? A cutout. What's the word when you make an outfit? You have a design. You have a pattern. It's called a pattern. Take a piece of denim, and if you would cut it out and make a pattern, you can make a dress out of it. Maybe it's not a dress you're going to wear to Yachasana. It's not a dress you're going to wear Yom Kippur to Ne'ilah, but it's a dress that you could wear that gives you pituach, gives you free movement. Take the same material, take the same denim and same burlap, and just make it into a bag. There's no place for the hands, there's no place for the feet, there's no place for the fingers, yeah? And put the person inside. That's called sack. They're wearing clothing. Yeah, you could be wearing a denim pair of shirts, denim shirt, denim pair of pants, denim skirt, or you could be wearing a denim sack. What's the difference? Mobility, right? That's why one of the misholim in Hasidus for a klipa is a sack. In Hasidus, when klipa wants to give a mashal, for a klipa they use the mashal of a sack. What's a sack? It's exactly the same material as the outfit that you would wear that would give you freedom of mobility. But in a sack, you're stuck. Why? It holds you. It inhibits you. It takes away your freedom of motion. You follow? So what does a sack mean? A garment that's not helpful. It's a beged, it's a levush that I'm wearing. And instead of giving me pituach, it gives me maiset. It entraps me. The same, yeah, everybody here, I'm wearing a shirt. Yeah, imagine someone take the same exact material that I'm wearing, my shirt, my pants, whatever it is, and make a big, big bag and put me inside. I'm also wearing clothes. My body is covered. Yeah, but I can't move. So it's like pitachta saki. David HaMelech is singing about serving Hashem. David is singing about serving Hashem. Mizmishir Chanukas Habayis LeDavid. Makiv Harochek, which we decided means celebrating, rejoicing in being submissive, rejoicing in having bittul to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And you say to Hashem, when you allowed me to submit to you, when you let me be your servant, when you let me be your servant, you took a sad thing and you made it into an infinity, into a beligavul. You made it into a mechila, into a forgiveness. You follow? Pitachta saki. You took a life that before this Kabbalah sale was a trap. Before this Kabbalah sale was a prison. And you opened it up. Pitachta saki. You opened up my sack. You opened up my trap. And to say it more edel, you developed my sack. It's not only that before I was stuck in a bag, and now I'm not stuck in a bag, because the clothing fit. The clothing that I wear that fit, I can develop, and I can refine it, and I can refine. You follow? That's like pitachta saki. Now let me talk about it, practically speaking. I have someplace on my computer. I have so much stuff on my computer, I can't find anything, which of course is so good that it's bad. But I have someplace on my computer a minor from the Rebbe, an answer from the Rebbe to a particular person. I have two different answers. Both of these answers speak about the principle of Kabbalah Sel Bittul, which is what we're singing. We're celebrating Kabbalah Sel. We're being happy about having Kabbalah Sel. And one of them, the Rebbe is writing to a person. I don't know who this person is. For a while, this was my screensaver. I had this, every time I opened the computer, that's what I would see. A person had a problem, and they had no control over it. They were completely enslaved. I don't know what the problem was, but a person was completely enslaved to something. And he wrote to the Rebbe, I keep on telling myself I'm going to start controlling my save. I keep on telling him stop. And every day I don't do it, and I say, wait till tomorrow. And the Rebbe writes to him, this is not because the Yetzer Hara is so strong. This is because you are not even trying to fight with the Yetzer Hara. You've given in to him. You've decided that he owns you, and you're doing nothing to help yourself. So you're going to go around and around in a circle, and every day you're going to say, today I'm going to start to try, and then today goes and comes and goes, and you say, tomorrow I'm going to start trying. It never happens because you've given in. Your Yetzer Hara owns you. Sharp, huh? But suck. Then another answer from the Rebbe to a different person, different context. A person wrote the Rebbe about a problem. Same thing. He writes to the Rebbe, I have a problem and I have no control over myself. In this area, I feel like I've completely lost control over myself. So the Rebbe writes back, you've tried so many different techniques to gain control over yourself in this particular area, and you keep failing. You've tried so many times to solve your problem through a meditation, through a pill, through a horror, a dance, I don't know. You've tried so many ways to help yourself and you failed. Now that all the other methods failed, why don't you try what says in Tanya Perek Mem Aleph? Why don't you try Kabbalah Sel? Why don't you just try stopping yourself from doing this bad activity? Because Hashem said, that's it. It's not a philosophy, it's not a meditation, it's Hashem said. You tried all the other methods, they failed, try this. That's Pitach Tasaki. Pitach Tasaki means when a person who has no control over himself gains control, the sack, which was yesterday a trap, is open. Open, meaning not only I can climb out of it, the very same material, the very same beged that yesterday was in the shape of a sack, which meant that I was imprisoned inside of it, it gives me mobility. I can move my hands, I can move my feet, I can walk up and down. Farvos, because pitach doesn't mean only to open the sack, it means to develop the sack. Pitach tosaki. So what is David HaMelech saying in the two words pitach tosaki? That when a human being faces an avoided challenge, and he or she figures out that the solution to this challenge is not a meditation and a philosophy and a bunch of ideas. It's the ability to do what Hashem said with Kabbalah Sel Malchus Shamayim. That is going out of jail. Pitach Tasaki. You opened up the sack. What 5 minutes before was a trap is now open. Open. First of all, I'm no longer entrapped. And second of all, the thing that yesterday entrapment today becomes midei vad. It becomes clothing that I can wear. And all the rest. You understand? So what comes next? When the Eibishter opens up our sack, when we have the ability to submit to Hashem, and in this submission to Hashem, pitach the saki, the Eibishter opens up the trap. We're not stuck anymore. Vatazreini simcha. Tait vatazreini simcha. Please. Vatazreini simcha. Huh? I told you. He girdled me. It's a gattel. Remember, you tied me with joy. Now, doesn't tying a person and joy sound like opposites? You're tying a person with joy. You tied me. What's happy? The cloud tying something down sounds like you're entrapping it. And of course, the answer is when pitach tosaki, when the beged stops being a trap, because the person has the koyach of Kabbalah sale, not to be entrapped, not to be a slave, not to be sold out to whatever thing owns him. So pitachta saki, I use my Kabbalah sale to not be a prisoner anymore. Automatically, automatically, the Eibishter ties us with joy. What's the happiness? The happiness is the regaining of self-control. The happiness is the joy of being a servant of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Verstehst? But what is the meaning of Vatazreni? He's not helping us. In the previous pasuk, it says Oizer. Yeah? Vatazreni means a person who figures out Kabbalah sale, which is not easy to do. A person who figures out that one of the gifts that Hashem gave us is the ability to do what we must and not do what we mustn't, to do the right thing, not do the wrong thing. Not because it makes sense, not because we understand it, because we agree with it, but simply because the Eibishter said that recognition, that acknowledgement is pitachta saki v'tazeni simcha. It's two things. It takes me out of jail and it ties me, it secures joy. There is no greater happiness than a person who owns himself. There's no greater happiness than successful discipline, right? The idea that I can control myself, the idea that I do what I want, the idea, I always tell you this, right? What's the meaning of a free person? It's one of my regular speeches. The meaning of a free person is I tell myself to do something and I listen 100% of the time. The definition of a free person is I tell myself not to do something and I listen 100% of the time. What's the definition of a slave? I tell myself to do something and I can't do it. I tell myself not to do something and I do it anyway. So a slave is saki. A free person is pitachta saki. So are you surprised that if a person manages to use the gift of Kabbalah sale that the Eibishter gave us, pitachta saki, not to be trapped, neither in asay tev, nor in svarmera. In other words, he can do anything he needs to do, and he's never ever going to do things he mustn't do, he shouldn't do. So naturally, there's an incredible simcha vatazei. There's a girdling, there's a tying down of simcha. And I will add another kvetch, another nakuda. Where do you put the gartel? There's an old joke. It depends. Some people put the gartel here. 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 Right? What's the gartel? It separates the higher part of the person, lower part of the person. The correct place to put a gartel is where your elbows are, right here, by the navel. Not at the waist, at the navel, here at the elbows. What's the Kabbalah? Chabad, Chagas, Nihi. The gartel goes between the Chagas and the Nihi. The gartel was here. You put the gartel here, okay? Which separates the Chagas from the Nihi. What's the Nihi? Nihi is the place of Kabbalah sale. Netzach Choden Yesayt or Kabbalah sale. Chagas means I feel. Chabad means you understand. Netzach Choden Yesayt means I accept. So the Vatazreni Simcha is another component. That there's a joy in a gartel. There's a joy in serving Hashem on a level of Nehi, as the Rebbe Marash says. Netzach Choden Yesayt. There's a joy in being able to submit to HaKadosh Baruch. Right? You see soldiers going to war and they're singing. They say, what are you singing about? Some of you are coming back in boxes. What's the teretz? If we sing, maybe we won't come back in a box. Right? And the singing has to have depth. In other words, I'm not just singing so I should survive. I'm singing because, like Rabbi Paltiel and Shem Tov used to think, Miyar Miyad Mura, right? We work for the Rebbe's army. There's joy in that. There's simcha in that. And the simcha shows itself in Chag Rabbeis Masneh. You put the gartel in the place of Nihi, in the place of Kabbalah Sel Machashamayim. Ponyel, you with me? So there comes the last pasuk. Give me 1 minute. I'm going to turn off this recording and put on a new one because it's not going to let me do more than an hour for some reason. Laman. Now the word Laman can be read in 2 or 3 different ways. Laman means because. Because means how were we zoiche to hafachta misbdi lemochali b'tachas simcha, because he is a merchel chavim leyidim, because we've already achieved something. So in other words, you could say that Laman means the second to the last pasuk happens because before the second to the last pasuk happens, the last pasuk happened, or you could say faket leman, in order that, so that. Why does the Eibushter give a Yida koyach of Kabbalah Sel Machal Shamayim leman, in order so that Yizamer Chavid should sing and sing and sing. The Yida will never stop singing. That Chavid, whoever Chavid is, should sing and sing and sing and sing and sing and sing. The Yida will never stop singing. And of course, we finished the kapitel with Hashem Elokai Le'el Medeka, which I'll get to in a moment. I'll get to this in a minute. By the way, Avremel has a song. Avremel Fried has a song on the last two psukim. Hafachtem is Machali. I mean, I'm not a big maven in music. I'm really not. There's a few songs on this is a kapitel Lamed and Tillim. We say it every day. There's a Elach Hashem Ekra, right? There's a few songs on these words. But Avramo made a song on the last two psukim. Hafachta mispedi lemochel li pitachta sakir dazini simcha leman zemecha chaver v'liyidim and the Shem Elokai Le'el Medeka. The Eibush took a sad situation and he made it happy, so that we should sing. The covet should be zaymesh, should sing Dakadosh Baruch Hu v'liyidim and never go quiet. So you could read the Laman more than one way. The preferred way, what I'm going to read is, Laman is not a reason for, but a reason that. The Eibush gave us the gift of Kabbalah Sel so that there should be the Inyan of Zemech Chav L'Yidim L'Shem Elokai Le'el Medeka. I want to just say one thing before I continue. Somebody at Israel is also saying Amen. The Frierdiker Rebbe in his Sichos says, the previous Rebbe says in the Sichos, a Yid is a Kabbalah Selnik is a Yid. A Jew is able to accept the yoke of heaven. Accepting the yoke of heaven is Jewish. That's the expression. A Yid is a Kabbalah Selnik is a Yid. The Jew is able to have Kabbalah Selnik. Now, what does that mean? What does that mean? I would imagine that none of you have been to drama school. You know what drama school is? You know what drama school? You've been to drama school?
I went to some.
You went to drama school? What is drama school? They teach you how to act, right? If they teach you how to act, there's a lot of things that you have to learn. I mean, I'm a terrible actor. I am such a bad actor, it's pathetic. I have no chush in it. I can't fake. I just don't, I'm not good at it. But when a person studies drama, they have to learn techniques. They have to learn how to laugh on cue, and then I cry. You have to learn all kinds of different things, yeah? But if you go to a good drama school, part of what they teach you is called motivation, motivatia. Which means, practically speaking, when you perform, you have a kavana. The kavana creates the quality of the act. Your act is good because you learned the kisharon, you have the skills to act. You're able to do things that people do naturally. You're able to do it as an actor, as an actress. You're doing it make believe, and it looks real because you have kisharon. But it has a depth, it has an integrity because you have a motivation. There's something behind it, something pushing you to do it, which is you have to start to get into the head of the person who you're imitating, what you call your character, and you have to be that character. That's your motivation. If you have all the skill of an actor or actress, but you don't understand the character, you don't understand the person you're imitating, the performance is going to be lacking. The kishot is perfect. You did everything right, but there's no motivation. There's no truth behind the character. You understand that, yes? This is called motivation. I mean, there's a great story. It's a Chassidish story that's bittersweet about a kid who was a yosem. He was an orphan. So he was adopted by a chazan, by a musician, by klezmer. And they traveled around performing, and this little kid would sing with them. He didn't play an instrument, he didn't play the violin, he didn't play the guitar, he didn't play the accordion, but he would sing and he would make funny faces, a face. Anyway, they came to a certain place, and the klezmer were doing their performance, and this boy was with the other klezmerim, the other musicians, and the conductor tells him, scream happier, lebedike. Tell the people to do everything louder. They should dance louder. They should sing louder. Lebedike. And this little kid was a hungry and tired orphan who was basically an indentured. He was a slave. They schlepped him around. They gave him a few pennies, and he wasn't in the mood. So the conductor gave him a patch. Shine lebedike. So he starts to scream lebedike, but he didn't scream it loud enough. He hit him again, and he hit him again. So the kid is being beaten to scream, be happy, be happy, be happy. So he's crying and screaming, be happy. And there's a whole Hayron Avoida from this story. I mean, this story is very realistic. It could have happened. You hit your kid and tell him to stop crying. So he's crying to stop crying, yeah? But everybody understands the meaning of motivation. What's the motivation to be a Yid? What's the motivation to serve Hashem? This is not an act. This is real. This is not drama school. This is life. What's the motivation? There's a lot of superficial motivation. One is community. I grew up this way. This is my father does. This is my mother. This is what I do. This is what my children are going to do. Kulturna. It's my culture. Yeah. Not a very good reason, but it works. A deeper person does it because he understands. He sees the credibility, he says the emes, he sees the meaning of Yiddishkeit. He understands. He understands Yiddishkeit. He feels Yiddishkeit. He enjoys Yiddishkeit. Yiddishkeit works for him. You understand? Yeah? Yeah. And then there's a person who doesn't understand, who doesn't feel, who doesn't enjoy. He does it anyway. Why? Because Hashem said. But the Rebbe hasten. Now, this last guy, this last gal, this last person, who's from, learns Torah and does mitzvahs, and he's not doing it because of culture. It's not doing it because he understands. It's not doing it because he feels. Not because he senses it, but because the Eibishter said. Is that a good motivation or a bad motivation? Imagine being an actor. What's the motivation? This is what my handler, this is what my conductor told me. What's the word? Producer. This is what the head of the show told me to do. That's not going to work. Ha! The Frierdiker Rebbe says a Yid can be motivated by the fact that Hashem said. A Yid is a Kabbalah Selnik. If you think about it, on the one hand, it's a very easy motivation. I don't have to learn, I don't have to think, I don't have to feel, I just do. But on the other hand, it's the deepest motivation. Why should I do what you said? Why should I do what you said? Why should I do what you said? What's the answer? Because you said it. Who are you? For me to do what you said just because you said it, you have to touch me in such a deep place that I can do it without a reason. That's what Kabbalah Seil is. You understand? And that's the pshat. Pitachta saki v'atazreni simcha. There's incredible joy in the freedom that comes from Kabbalah Seil. Leman, what's the point? Yizamer chachaved. I'll say it in plain English. A Yid should sing and sing and sing and never stop singing. Yeah. Now chaved, what does chaved mean? Glory, honor. Chaved, if you know math, chaved is 32. Right? Chaved is 20. Chaf is 20, Beis is 2, Vav is 6, and Daled is 4. It's 32. It says in Kabbalah that chaved with a Vav goes on Lamed Beis Nesivas Chachma. Chachma, it says if you see that Chachma has 32 misiles, sin alleyways. Sometimes Chaved goes on Chachma. But usually Chaved is a levush, it's Malchus. Baruch, Hashem, Kivoid, Malchusay, these three words both mean the lowest level. Chaved means a Yid whose relationship with the Eibishter is secondary, is far. My connection to Hashem is not intimate. I'm just covered. I'm just the honor of Hashem, the glory of it. I'm far away. So the Eibishter gave us Pitachta Saki Vatazreini Simcha. The Eibishter gave a Yid the gift of Kabbalah Seil, so that a Yid who's on a low level, a Yid who's far away, Leman Yezamer Chachaved, he should sing to the Eibishter V'Layidim and never stop singing. Now. What does it mean to sing and never stop singing? What does it mean to sing and never stop singing? Depends who you ask, right? Elie Wiesel. writes in one of his books. My daughter is a big chassid of his, so I know what he writes in his books for my daughter. That he and the Rebbe had an argument in the early 1960s. In other words, much closer to the war, where he kept on talking to the Rebbe about never forgetting. Never forget what the Nazis did. Never forgive the Nazis. And the Rebbe talked to him about moving on. And he said to the Rebbe, how could you move on? How could you move on? How could you go forward? Look what happened. You know what the Rebbe told him? Crying is for children. Kids cry. Adults, move on. And the Rebbe said to him, basically, grow up and move on, which is kind of intense. Yeah, it's almost mean. So he said to the Rebbe, please teach me how to cry. Teach me how to cry. So the Rebbe told him, I will not teach you how to cry. I'm not telling the story in the right sequence, but all these words are in the story. I'm not teaching you how to cry. So he says to the Rebbe, if you're not going to teach me how to cry, what will you teach me? The Rebbe said, I'll teach you how to sing. Never stop singing. Now, why do people sing? People sing for different reasons. People sing because they're happy. And people sing because they want. There's different kinds of nagina, right? One of the forms of nagina is a song which expresses a longing, right? A song which expresses a love, a song which expresses a desire. So if you're singing because you desire something, when do you stop? Either when you get it, or when you stop to believe that you will get it. Correct? If you're singing because you want something, when do you stop singing? Either because you got it. My song was saying, I desire. I don't have to desire. I have. Or it's never going to happen. You lose hope. Laman is a means you have a song of desire. It never stops. You never lose hope, and you never get it. You never lose hope, and you never get it. It's a Lashon HaZoyar, which is brought in Kutus of Mayan and other Mamori Chassidus. The lower light, which goes on Malchus, Kovid, calls to the higher light constantly, and it never stops. It never gets quiet. You know why? It never gets what it wants. So I listened to last week's class, and one of the things I taught you 2 weeks ago in the class was wanting God is sometimes more than having Him. The gift of Kabbalah Seir, right? Pitachta saki vatazreini simcha. The Eibishter opens up the sack. He gives us the ability not to be trapped, not to be stuck. He gives us the ability for Kabbalah Seir. Right? That's the touch. Pitachta saki. The thing that trapped me has been opened. Vatazreini simcha. This girdles me with joy. Leman yizamecha chavid. That the Yid down here in this world is singing. He never stops singing. Singing means I still believe, and singing means I'm still waiting. Why? How much you're going to wait? How much you're going to believe? The answer is, what it is that you're waiting for, you have it the most in your desire. The minute you have it, you don't. Do you understand? Wanting is more than having. It's the opposite of Ani Amarti B'Shalva Lemet Le'elam. In the middle of this kapitel, he says, okay, I'm good. That's wrong. That's klippa. Leman, when it comes to Kedusha, Yezamercha Chavit singing to Hashem. I want. V'lo Yidem, it never goes quiet, never stops singing, because it never gets what it wants. And in never getting what it wants, it has. A simple Yid who served Hashem in a Kabbalah sale doesn't love himself, but he never stops singing. He never stops singing. That in that want, in that desire, there is the Eibishter. But there's a concept called Hashem Elokai. I'm out of time, and I'm not doing this next week. We're doing a Zicha next week. So we're going to finish. Hashem Elokai. You know what Hashem Elokai means? God becomes my God. Hashem means Hashem. Elokai means my God. Elokai means my personal God. I make the Eibishter my own. Making the Eibishter my own means what? That I got him No, if I got him, why am I singing? You see what I'm saying? Havaya lekoi, that Havaya became a lekoi. Like you have in Hasidus, there's a lekim and there's a lekenu. What's the difference between a lekim and a lekenu? A lekim means the God of concealment. A lekenu means my personal God. Hashem lekoi, the Eibishter becomes my personal God. Why am I singing now? La'olam meideka. Oila means no matter how close I come to the Eibishter, and no matter how much I'm able to make the Eibishter my own, I know that there is more that I submit to. Oideka is the same as the word moide, the same as the word hoidah, the same as the word hoichabahoid. You understand? La'oila meideka, no matter how many times I make Hashem my own, I know there's more. And the more continues to motivate me for Haidah. And that's the taich. Leman yezamecha chaved v'lo yid. A yid, a pashut yid. We're all pashut yid. Nobody's one with the Eibishter. Sings, and he never stops singing. He's singing because he wants. He never stops singing, A, because he doesn't get it. And B, he never quits. Doesn't say, I'm never going to get it. And Havaya lekah, he takes Havaya, makes it a lekim. A lekenu. He takes godliness, which is beyond him, and he personalizes it. So why is he singing now? Why is he singing Baited? Because beyond what he's personalized, there's more. And beyond what he's personalized, there's more. Like Hasidus always says, the beginning of a Jew is faith. And the end of the Jew is faith. And in between this faith and this faith is understanding. Every day you understand a little more than the day before. And each later day, when you understand a little more, you understand that there's more that you don't understand yet. And that's the pasuk. You sing it to the Eibishter, you're never going to stop singing. Number one, I never quit. A Jew doesn't quit. And number two, you never get what you want. Because even though Havaya Lekah, you do get what you want. There's always more. Now, I have to say, we're finished. Yeah? Finished means that next week we're learning a Sikha. That's what finished means. We're not finished. When I gave these classes, I looked in different Sfarim. I learned the Rishonim on this. I learned a little Hasidus on this. So a lot of the things I said are based on things that I saw in Sfarim. But we strung it together. We decided what it means. So is it emes? I just hope it's not sheker, you understand? Okay, we should say shechianu, yeah. The beginning of this year, we learned the third part of Hoidu. And now we just learned Very good. I'll see you in a week. Thank you for coming and listening. My pleasure. If you stick around till the end, you say, okay, good. Now I understand. Now I understand.
Okay.
Yes.
Why does it's like a very known thing that, like, let's say like tzaddikim or like people that are in a high level, they have like a glass all, but it seems like it's like bitter. It seems like it's not like sweet.
I disagree categorically.
Like you put yourself like in a state of like not suffering, but like not enjoying, like, I don't know. It seems to me in that way.
I think tzaddikim.
Like we don't understand.
Tzaddikim are not like that. Maybe you and I are like that. Tzaddikim get great joy from being Hashem's servants. They get pleasure from it. It makes them happy. I'm able to do something for the Eibishter.
Yeah, that's like in a tzaddik's level, but like in our level, let's say.
Oh,
like
so,
in order not to enjoy food or like put yourself up in that level of like chaos. Oh, it seems that this.
And I'm going to be honest with you. It's not necessarily how it's supposed to be. Meaning to say, people have made it negative. It doesn't have to be negative. We make it negative because we don't really buy in. We don't really buy in to the mila of Kabbalah, to what's good about it. The greatest way to serve Hashem
Hello?